All right. I'm sitting here with Brian FEY of the Bosque Village up in the mountains above Lake Pátzcuaro in Michoacán, Mexico. Brian, stand by. Brian, I'm curious about the annuals that you grow here at the Bosque, fruit, vegetables and herbs and whatnot. What sort of variety do you grow?
Well, we have a lot of gardens, and we've grown corn, variety kinds of corn, especially like the heirloom corns. We grow radishes. We grow calabasas, a squash. We grow a lot of things. I mean, the list is too long to just list it. My interests, though, are in growing things other people aren't growing, and introducing things, or reintroducing in some cases. For example, we introduced daikon radish, which grows well here. There's a lot of Asian vegetables that no one here has had, and I might as well be a guy who tries to experiment with them.
Are the locals taking to them, or?
Well, you know, we have to first prove that we can do it, and then we have to collect enough seeds so we can start to give them away. And we'll start targeting individuals to give those seeds to, people who will then not just grow it that year, but they will in turn produce more seeds.
Okay.
And you know, there's a lot of things that become forgotten in a society. So we're reintroducing annuals that have come out of Mexico originally. Of course, heirloom tomatoes are a really exciting one. People here believe you have to have a greenhouse to grow tomatoes. I don't believe that. In fact, in my life, I've seen a lot of old greenhouses. You know, the roof has fallen in, and I just don't like it. The reason is because there's this temptation, and this is true with almost all of modern agriculture, to make the system you want to exist instead of working with what nature is providing. And so the examples of that would be irrigating out of season instead of using the natural flow of the rains, or setting up these specialized, very costly plastic structures, these greenhouses. I would rather figure out how we can grow things the way that they want to grow. And of course we have leeway with that. We can create microclimates and so forth. Perennials in general end up being a lot of work in most cases.
Annuals?
I mean, annuals, sorry.
Okay.
We'll cut that. Annuals in a lot of cases end up being more work. I'm more focused on the perennials, and we'll talk about that, I guess, in a sec. But of course, the food that people recognize is the annuals. We're lucky enough to live in a state where there's a lot of things growing. Now, a lot of people have access down by the lake to water, and so it's easier for them. We do not have outside water here, so our challenge is very different. And also, we live in a state where there's different climates. So we have tierra caliente that's producing coconuts and mangoes and papayas. So the goal isn't necessarily to produce all of the food that we eat right here. I mean, trade is okay. Even indigenous tribes would do lots of trade, and some of them would migrate seasonally to where the food is.
That kind of speaks to a couple of other questions I have, like what time of year do you grow? And that ties in with the water too. And what do you do with the vegetables that you do grow?
Right. And yeah, this is all about fitting into the system as it is instead of forcing it. So our rains come in June here. I wish they came 2 months earlier. But we get our first rains then. And that's the point at which we are slamming plants into the ground. A lot of them we've already done as starts, and we do water those. So all year long we're making starts out of seeds. And when those rains come, then we can grow a lot of stuff quite easily, especially now that we have fertilizer from the rabbits and the chickens. We're improving the soil quite a bit. We have a fairly short growing season then. It's probably 4 months for the traditional annuals, but we've been improving our process, and so now, I mean, we are often harvesting squash in January and February. And so we're trying to extend our growing season. The other thing you can do to extend your growing season, in a sense, is food preservation. And that's not something that is common in this culture, but in a lot of cultures where it's very snowy and you'll die if you don't do it, they know how to can things. That's energy intensive, but it's very nice. I mean, I've been eating canned food, canned meat even. And drying it is excellent, because if you can make a solar dehydrator, then you're using no extra energy. You're not burning any wood or anything, and that's like extending your growing season, but you're really growing your food survival length of time or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is, of course, root cellars.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a root cellar yet, but we certainly should.
Mm-hmm.
Even small things. I mean, we don't use any refrigeration here,
Mm-hmm.
so because I don't want to spend any electricity on heating or cooling.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are a little surprised by that, but it is perfectly possible to live well without refrigeration. People did it for a very long time. Refrigeration is a very recent, very costly way of preserving food.
Costly in many ways.
Yeah. So as far as the annual cycle, we're still learning and tweaking it, but the main thing is to grow when the rains are there, develop your microclimates, and then preserve your food. Yeah.
Do you still ferment? Do you make sauerkraut or kimchi?
Fermentation is a great method of food preservation. That's really the original reason why it was done. Of course, now we also do it for the flavor because it's cool.
And
But
healthy.
and healthy, yeah. I like the book Wild Fermentation.
Ah.
That's a great book, and we've done things like that. Take our radish greens, which normally we would just give to the rabbits or throw away, and instead we can ferment those and make gundrew, which is a very odd-tasting thing. Gundrew. And there's a million other kinds of fermentation. We've not gotten into all of them. I mean, we'd like to be doing kombucha. We need to. I mean, there's many ways you can ferment meats. In many cases, fermentation is actually a waste if you have fresh stuff. So in this climate, we're really lucky. We can actually have food most of the year without doing preservation. So with every case, we kind of want to do an equation on it. We want to figure out what's the cost, the real costs. Like we were doing some canning recently, and some folks canned some tomatoes. I find that ridiculous. It was a waste of energy in our case, in our climate,
Mm-hmm.
because we are getting better and better at growing tomatoes all year long.
Mm-hmm.
And so spending our energy on canning them is really a loss. And maybe it's a better thing to do to make sun-dried tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
They take up very little space, and then they're ready to use when we want them, and they're a very high-value thing. So
And you can solar dry them.
right, and they might make a good product to sell or trade.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that there isn't any one overall solution here. It's picking and choosing for each case whether it's smart to preserve food or not, or to grow it a certain way. You know, I mean, we for example, even though I'm against irrigation, which is a very hardcore position to take, we still use water to grow baby plants. We'll still take trees that aren't able to survive here from seed on their own, and we'll get them big enough so that they can. Avocados are an example of that. If we just plant an avocado in the ground, it's going to get this big and die.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we baby it for 2-3 years even,
Mm-hmm.
and we get it this tall, and then that avocado then can survive on its own without any water at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always these exceptions. It's not a hard and fast rule. So
During the rainy season, the growing season, do you sell anything at market or do you trade?
we haven't yet, and we have just started to have surpluses in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
In general, the best people to feed are ourselves. It's a good place to start.
Sure.
And then the next people to feed are our friends and family locally.
Mm-hmm.
So there are farms that think they're successful because they produce a bunch of food and they truck it off with their CSA to some other place. I'm suspicious of that. I'm going to count that in the energy equation as a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to stay local with it. We have traded some. For example, I like to have nice salad greens. You know, and around here, iceberg lettuce is like what people have. And people don't generally eat salads here. But so what I can do is get other kinds of seeds. Some people do spinach, but a variety of kinds of greens that what we do is we try them out and see how they do. And then we end up with a surplus. Those we can then either trade or sell to people who are developing a taste. People from the city might develop a taste for greens, or foreigners, of course, often want different kinds of salads. So the things we've found as products so far that are the most tradable are rabbits and eggs.
Mm-hmm.
We have, when there's few people here, we have too many eggs. But generally I want to have the right number of chickens per eggs. And I actually want to, in town, I don't even want to get in the business of selling eggs. I want to get town off the commercial egg grid by having each house have a hen or two. That's a better scale. Centralized egg farming is actually not the best thing.
Yeah.
Because people have food waste, and chickens just are this amazing food disposal or waste disposal system. It's gone.
Fertilizer maker.
Yeah, they will eat anything.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get small scale chicken farming going. Rabbits, I do not believe are so good to do on a small scale, because most people would then have to keep rabbits in an inhumane system. They would have to cage them. I believe rabbits should run free, or in a big pen where they can have fun and everything. And so I would rather have semi-centralized rabbit things that basically produce enough so that they can deliver to a wheelbarrow drive away or a burrows drive away. If you do that, then you're off the meat grid. We're off the meat grid here. We buy no commercial eggs. We buy no commercial meat. That's a huge success, since meat is one of the biggest ecological problems in the world, the way it's produced. So, yeah, but and then other things, the other type of thing, the problem happens when you have a surplus, right? The other thing we're getting is with our grafted trees, we have grafted pear and membrillo onto manzanillo rootstock. And those trees are currently only like 1.5 meters tall. We have 1,200 of them. Those are going to be 20 feet tall. Well, we had too many quince 2 years ago. That was before the squirrels learned that they were tasty. This last year we didn't get hardly any quince because the squirrels ate them all. But what that means is that each year we can graph out the harvest. We're going to get a ridiculous amount of quince. Now, quince is not a very useful fruit. You can make jam, you can make ate with a lot of sugar in it. It's just too tart. One nice thing is that the rabbits like it, and quinces last pretty long. So it could be that we could grow rabbit food, quinces, put it in a root cellar, and suddenly we solved our rabbit food problem for part of the year. I have another interest, and that's fermentation. Just like apples originally spread across America with Johnny Appleseed because they were making apple cider. It wasn't just because they wanted to eat apples. We can ferment the quince. Now, it's pretty tart. We've done this, and it's not really that drinkable. So the new solution is to make quince mead, because we have bees over on the property, and we'll be setting up a new bee spot.
Oh, so, you raise bees too?
Well, they're not my bees. I let a guy put them there.
Oh, okay.
But, Ramon, he knows how to do apiculture. He knows how to do beekeeping.
Oh.
And so it's a cost to get into it. But it would be worth it, because I buy honey currently, and everybody loves honey. So if we had the honey to make mead, which is really good to make, I always age it for 2 years, so it's, have to be patient. But if we can then have honey and quince, we can produce a very valuable product. In any traditional system, one of the most popular products is alcohol. And then we could eventually get off the alcohol grid, because we currently buy beer and stuff, But so in each case, what we're looking for is the surplus. The kitchen does get frustrated with me, because I'll have something and they'll say, oh, we want to use that. And I'll say, no, you can't use it, because I want to get a surplus. And if they go eat it all, then we won't have that. What I want is to be able to produce more seeds, and each year have a bigger garden until I say, okay, we've got so many seeds, it's ridiculous, we can give them to people for free, and we can use it in the kitchen too.
So you're doing that in the interest of seed saving?
Totally.
Gotcha.
We have to get off buying commercial seeds as well. In many cases, I get 1 packet of seeds in, and we grow the plant, we get our initial success, we save all those seeds, we do it again, in 3 years we've got surplus. That's success.
But in those first 2 years, we're not
going to think short term. We're just saving seed and planting it. And we're learning how to plant it. So we'll plant it in different microclimates, in different kinds of soil. Because you can read whatever book you want that tells you how to do things right, but it's very important that you get heavily into experimenting. Start doing things outside of the official answer, because then you find your successes that work in your environment with your rain cycle. So,
cool. Can we talk a minute about the perennials that you're growing here, both non-native and native? What was here, and what have you started?
Right. I sort of almost look down on annuals, even though annuals are the thing everybody wants to see, annual gardens bursting with life all year long, that you have to water. What is here natively is a lot of really interesting plants that have medicinal value, many of which you can eat. Epazote grows here. There's a whole bunch of plants. The most important ones are the trees. When you look at an oak tree, it has more biomass than I don't know how much of a cornfield. And a cornfield is fallow most of the year. A cornfield is going to have dead earth, right? An oak tree is going to protect the earth. And so we don't think of oak trees as what we would eat, but they're really actually very important. We have oak here, we have pine, we have madrone, we have capaline. There's some other native trees, and those are actually coming back because this land was logged a while back, so we're seeing trees returning. Back to the oak trees. In traditional industrial farming, you pretty much cut everything down and just have a naked field. And you really kill off the earth after a while, then you have to dump chemicals on it and everything. We're looking for maximum biomass, and it does not have to be biomass that is directly useful to humans. Because we're also trying to feed a biosystem. And there's going to be a lot of things in it that we don't want to eat. Some of them may even bug us, you know. We want more animal life. There's foxes here, coyotes, bobcats, ocelots, armadillos, a lot of nocturnal life, a lot of bird life. We've already seen the bird life increasing radically. And that's because we're not cutting things down. We're leaving trees when they fall, and that builds more fungus layer in the soil. So when you talk about perennials, I don't want to just talk about the food perennials we normally think of. There's a surprise here, though. The oak tree is actually food. One of the biggest sources of food for indigenous people in North America was flour made from oak acorns. So you really got to get suspicious about the idea that we should cut down the oak trees and plant corn when the oak tree is massive with a huge root system and it lasts all year long and has other uses with the wood, and it is just spewing out food. We just did the test on this the other day where we cracked open 2 kinds of oak acorns and we tested out to see if the chickens like to eat it. Well, they do. And we also noticed that certain oaks the birds like to eat more than others. Well, then that may be more likely that we also like that. Edit that out. There are some issues. You have to learn how to leach the tannins out. We have to go back and relearn what agriculture used to be. We imagine agriculture, even people who are now getting back into gardening and everything, they still imagine gardens with things in rows. They still imagine, even permaculture people, I see as too limited by this modern idea of agriculture. I want to get back into food forest farming so that we can do more hunting and gathering, so that we can be having this flourishing old growth forest that we then scrape bits of life off of. And we might be eating bugs. And we might be eating things that aren't always the tastiest. We can also take some of those native things and selectively reproduce them to make a better one. For example, we do have here Himalayan blackberries. They're not invasive, by the way, because it's too dry. But there's also native blackberries. They're much smaller. They're very tasty. And what we've started doing is taking and looking for the best of those native blackberries and reproducing them. We can take the cane of that, put it down into the ground, and that will grow a new plant. We can take and grow it from seed, which of course then we're taking the best genetic example, we're remixing those genetics. If we plant those seeds and we end up with, let's say, 1,000 plants, and then we pick the best 2 of those, and then we do it again, we're doing exactly what our oldest ancestors did when they were just eating something good and then throwing a seed nearby. They were doing genetic engineering in a caveman kind of way. Well, we could become like modern cavemen. We now have the scientific knowledge to understand the genetics behind what's going on. And we can do better than just grab one and throw it. We can actively target a good plant. And we can make a native blackberry that is suited to here and has a bigger fruit, maybe is even better. This is how other plants came about. Originally, wheat was just a grass that barely had a seed you could eat. And barley, same thing. These few grasses that came out of the Fertile Crescent. And so with that kind of knowledge and patience, we can actually take the natives and genetically select them so that we have an increasing amount of food here, not just for us, but also for the birds and other stuff.
Well, I imagine you have to water some of the non-native perennials, right?
Well, yeah, well,
You already
oh,
mentioned the example of the avocado. It takes a couple of years to.
right. We water babies. We'll baby babies.
Uh-huh.
But if something here cannot survive on its own without human help, then it's probably not going to be a good choice for us long term
Mm-hmm.
if we have to irrigate it. There may be exceptions, and again, it's case by case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no big law here. It's a bunch of pragmatic decisions. But yeah, we'll baby the babies. The better way to water them, in a sense, is if we can dig a spot, for example, where we can collect more water off the road.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can then make that so that the earliest storms fill that area with water earlier, and the
Mhm.
latest storms as well, we've extended the water season in that exact location. And that's where we put our water-hungry plants.
Mm-hmm.
There's also kind of a other strange idea here, and that is that we're willing to grow things that won't do well here in terms of fruiting.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I have up here a macadamia tree. Well, macadamia trees do well in Tierra Caliente, about an hour and a half from here. That tree does not give us any fruit. But we also have climate change occurring.
Mm-hmm.
For all I know, it could be a degree hotter, a degree colder here. There could be a few centimeters more rain or less. We've had a lot of rain variation lately, and people are worried about it.
Mhm.
There is less rain than there was.
Mm-hmm.
So this other idea I have is planting outside of your current climate.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can baby something that may not ever give us fruit, we can plant for climate change. Because when climate change occurs, if it occurs rapidly, and whether it's
already
human,
occurring.
yeah, whether it's human caused or not, I'm not interested in debate. Climate change has always occurred, and it's going to occur. So what we can do is plant plants that would do well with various climate changes, and then when that change happens, and when we see a die-off, I mean, there could be massive die-offs of the vegetation here, then we've already got seeds on site for the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Because all through history, I mean, plants have moved, you know, one valley to another, one continent to another.
Mhm.
There used to be tropical plants in the North Pole,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or at least in Upper Canada. They find the fossils.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really long-term idea.
Mhm.
And that's a form of seed saving. Instead of having a vault somewhere that we save the seeds in, we just grow things that wouldn't be quite right for here.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, that's what I call near natives. I like especially to grow near natives because there's no risk of invasiveness, and they already exist. The seeds already end up coming over with birds and things. So when we talk about near natives, I'm thinking of, you know, things that grow in a valley over there. Or maybe
Mhm.
they grow in the Malpais, some strange land over there.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it grows 100 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm traveling, I'm often collecting seeds and planting them here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for the unknown future. We'll see what happens. I mean, we got a lot of kinds of pines here. We've brought in, for example, piñons.
Mm-hmm.
Piñons don't grow here, but they're obviously a very valuable pine. And even though we're growing for everything, for the whole system, of course we have a slight bias towards the plants we know are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of plants like that we should not lose. I mean, quinine comes from a tree we should probably not lose, since malaria may be coming back, actually, and is now resistant to a lot of the medicines.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the most powerful plants that have ever existed, I want to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes medicinal plants of all kinds.
Have you harvested nuts off of the pinions?
No, my pinyon tree, my biggest one is this big.
Okay.
I bought that one. My other pinyon trees are this big, and I bought seeds in Morelia that were old. They were on a shelf, and we planted about 100, and I think we got 4 to germinate.
Mm-hmm.
And what I should really do is get some from up north. I should find a place in Mexico, so I don't have international seed trading issues,
Mm-hmm.
and plant, you know, several thousand, because those are not fast-growing trees,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a clear source of excellent food.
Mm-hmm.
Ginkgo is another one. The ginkgo tree,
Uh-huh.
I bought seeds of that. I bought them actually from an Asian food store.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we didn't have very good germination rate. But that gets us interested too, because this is all a puzzle. I mean, there is some joy in this, where we fail and we try again a different way. So now we've got ginkgo trees, and they're, you know, not very big,
Mm-hmm.
and they take a long time to mature.
Mm-hmm.
But they're, again, a powerful tree. Evolutionarily speaking, they're one of the oldest trees.
Really?
Oh yeah, they're a very old tree, and so why not? There's other cases where there's plants that we could propagate by division, and that's how they're normally done. Bird of paradise, for example. Is bird of paradise important for food? Probably not. Although I've never looked up whether you can eat it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But it's a great flower. I love it.
Yeah.
And we don't cut them or anything. We just leave them on the thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I hate it when people come and cut flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Some people actually find the most rare flowers and they cut them up. They chop them down. They're basically killing what they love.
Uh-huh.
It's really a bummer. Anyway, with the bird of paradise, we can propagate them by division, but and they're really hard to do by seed. The reason to do them by seed is because we're genetically mixing them up. We're remixing them genetically. There's a lot of plants that we have that are only done by division. Bananas are a good example. We're almost going to lose bananas because we've bred them out so much that there's no seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's ever a disease that kills off bananas, and we don't have a diversity of bananas, we lose one of the best fruits there is. That's really tragic. And we've done that to ourselves, you know. So instead, in some cases, like I was saying, in some cases we want to improve the plant, which is what has happened in the past with so many. In other cases, we actually want to do it the hard way, propagate it from seed, and re-diversify the genome. The other benefit of that is we could actually breed plants that want to live here. So if let's look at tomatoes. There are lots of kinds of tomatoes, right? And they're from the Americas. If instead of buying seeds from a standard industrial place and always planting those, we are always taking and collecting our own seeds, planting them, collecting the best of those, planting them, collecting the best of those, planting them, and we're using less water to do it, then we're actually breeding Bosque tomatoes. We are evolving them to want to live here. That's an entirely different philosophy than almost everyone has about agriculture, which is to force the plants to do what you want them to do in the spot you want them to do it.
Yeah.
It's
more
absolutely opposite.
agroecology than agriculture.
Agroecology, let's get back to making like really an old growth forest. I mean, the goal here is to have an old growth forest with massive biodiversity that we can then still get products out of. The biggest problem is the humans then. I mean, if we just left this alone, if we just walled it in and left it alone, it would naturally heal itself. It would naturally diversify. But we also want to learn how to get food. And so the question is, can we have humans near nature without the humans utterly obliterating it? For example, even though we have a lot of firewood, we want to minimize the use of firewood. We need to do more solar cooking. And we'll still burn fires. I mean, there's nothing more primal and excellent for humans than sitting around a fire with other humans. But even though it seems like an infinite resource, we've got to not use it. If you look at the evolution of community and people, what did they do? They went to a place, they took resources from it, and then usually they went to another place. Often we started nomadic, right? They went to another place, often seasonally. That's a really good strategy. But when we started staying in one place and doing agriculture in a more intense way, we started stomping all the ground around it. And you just see death radiating out from the humans. I mean, first the humans killed off all the megafauna, all the big animals. I mean, the big animals that are now extinct disappeared the same time humans came into control of things. And, you know, just coincidentally. And then we, as we stayed in places, we started to use up the water, we guide it more, we stomped the ground down. And so in all the cases, we keep destroying it. Now, oil's allowed us to go ahead and put this massive resurgence of fertility, temporary fertility, kind of like, you know, doing drugs or something. You get this temporary feeling. But we've lost the actual earth that was sustaining us. We're smarter now, and we see the pattern. We see that when we show up in a place, we're going to destroy the land. So the question here in the Bosque is, can we lower the actual literal human footprint? For example, the trails. We don't just walk everywhere, because even our feet will compact the soil and we'll get less mushrooms. Mushrooms are a great harvest here. And I don't want to learn how to grow them in a building. I want to learn how to work with nature, so we're supporting them we're supporting their own life. And we're doing that. We're actually growing them from spores now. We're reproducing the spores and spewing them all around the forest.
That's awesome.
Because that's what Stamets, Paul Stamets, recommended in his propagation books. He said he has fantasies about that, you know, and he's a guy who knows about mushrooms. So So anyway, reducing the human footprint is about then not having lots of, for example, I don't want to divide the land up and have everybody have their different separate systems. I want to figure out what things we centralize and what we don't, and how we can crush less of the land, how we can harvest less of the stuff. And we keep learning that. I mean, we just the other day made pine needle tea for the first time.
Wow.
You know, and I've been here 8 years. There's 4 kinds of pines we tested. One of them was definitely tastier, and the pines grow here like grass. So now we have an infinite source of free pine needle tea. I know pine needle tea might not sound like it tastes very good. It sounds very
medicinal,
piney.
or?
It actually is very good for you. I don't know, it depends what you call medicinal. It has tons of vitamin C. It also has antioxidants. More importantly, it grows here with no irrigation.
Yeah.
And so I can say to people, drink all the tea you want.
Right.
You know, and now we'll figure out, can we dry it? You know, if we can dry it and still use it, then we can also transfer that to places that are more urban. Although ideally, if this succeeds, if we can really figure out how people can live in a forest, even a whole town, if 100, 400 people could live in a forest and have all of their basic food needs met by that system, even their clothing needs with rabbit furs, you know, sure, we would still import some things, and sure, we could trade things out. But if we can really figure that out so that we have an old-growth forest sustainably with a community of people, then we have solved the human problem on Earth. We have turned ourselves from people raping the Earth and destroying it into people who are actually back in tune with nature. And that hasn't been common in human experience. Even, I mean, people idealize indigenous cultures, but most indigenous cultures did the same thing. I mean,
like the Anasazi.
Yeah, there's so many cultures that rose and then fell because they irrigated too much, and then the irrigation failed for some reason or another. The Mayans fell. You know, they ran out of wood and they had water issues. I mean, this is the common thing. The only indigenous groups that didn't destroy the earth around them lived at a very subsistence level. They were not ambitious in trying to consume a lot more.
Yeah, ambition.
Yeah, and so here we want to be looking at all the oldest ways to live. We still want, we're not anti-technology, we still want to use machines, but ideally they'd be machines that last a very long time, that we can build, hopefully out of wood, and that are human-powered or solar-powered. Something other than burning combustible fuels.
What about, just in the interest of time, let's talk a second about the animals here. How many chickens and rabbits do you have here?
We started raising chickens and rabbits, one sec, here, pause.
So let's talk a little bit about the animals on site here, chickens and rabbits specifically.
Yeah, I've been hesitant to get animals at all. In Helena Scott Nearing's book, The Good Life, they talk about the troubles of having animals and how much work they cause, and it's true. With plants, you can ignore them for quite a while, and it's fine. But animals are like children, and you know they're a being that you've taken responsibility for, and so you have an obligation to take care of them and make sure they have happy, good lives. So I rejected the idea for quite a while, but we were still eating meat sometimes, and eggs are an amazing food. Humans probably evolved stealing eggs, actually. It's one of the best foods for us, and it's all prepackaged. So it got tempting, and so we went ahead and got a few chickens, and that worked out really well. It was great to be off the egg grid, not buying any more eggs. And I know they're healthy. I know where they came from. More importantly, I know that the chickens weren't suffering in a warehouse somewhere. You know, chickens are actually pretty fun. They're sort of smart. We got a couple that are so friendly they'll come up and sit on your lap, and they're curious. They're strange beasts. They're actually evolved from dinosaurs, and their genetic parent is red jungle fowl in Indonesia. So you can learn about what an animal is based on looking at its heritage. So it worked out okay. We had to have a good fence because we live in the forest, and there are a lot of things that want to come and kill those animals. We also had troubles with ravens stealing the eggs. There's very big, smart ravens that steal eggs here. So it went well, and that encouraged me. Rabbits are kind of difficult to process if you want to kill them for meat, and I didn't want to do that. It's you got to defeather them and everything.
Chickens.
chickens, sorry. Edit. Chickens are actually kind of difficult to deal with if you're raising them for meat. You have to defeather them and everything. So I decided to try out rabbits. Rabbits are one of the most efficient converters of plant mass into protein. And so I didn't want to keep them in cages like they do normally, but we built a pen and got some rabbits, and I decided not to build houses for them, and they started building their own. So they dig under the ground, and they reproduce in a natural way. So I don't even see the babies. This is a lot easier, because if you have a row of cages, you have to go in there and take care of them a lot. The guy I bought the rabbits from told me they'd be dead within a week, because I did not know what I was doing. But I think it turns out I do know what I'm doing, because I let the rabbits know what they're doing, or let them do what they're doing, and they know how. Mm-hmm. So in the pen, we made shelters to shelter them from the rain and everything. Under those, they dug in, and they make tunnels down there. They do whatever they want. And that is the natural way that they're supposed to be reproducing. And so we get litters. We have 4 right now. Each one of those groups has 6 to 12 babies. We're not sure yet because they're just starting to come out. And so they reproduce like crazy. If you were to make a graph of their reproduction, it would be like an exponential curve. So we actually found that we were overproducing rabbits all of a sudden, and we had to keep the population down, control how many mothers were actually reproducing. That's one of our first surplus successes. They've also been fun. They're no hassle, really. It is easier to process a rabbit than a chicken. We figured out how to kill them in a really easy way. There's no blood involved. We break their neck. It's very fast after they've had a very happy life. And then you can cut the fur and you peel the skin off. And then we can also use that fur. There's no part of the rabbit we waste. Not one. There's a few things we'd like to use a little bit better, but there's nothing we waste. So that gets us off the meat grid. Plus, we can make our own clothing. Mm-hmm. And making clothing out of plant matter often requires fields and energy-intensive things like cotton. And I don't know how to do it. So I think very soon anybody in the Bosque is going to be wearing rabbit furs. We've already made a few hats, and we're going to make a jacket next, and then we'll make a blanket. And if you've got a rabbit skin hat, a rabbit skin jacket, and a blanket for nighttime, you're pretty covered.
You're warm.
Yeah, and sure you'll have some other clothes and things, but that's a huge win. We currently buy tannins to do that with, and we need to learn how to use the tannins in the oaks here to do that.
For tanning the hide?
For tanning the hides. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How much of the chickens and the rabbits' diets come from outside of the Bosque?
The ideal with any animals we have is we grow all of their own food right here. It's a difficult goal. Most people buy big sacks of food, and we still do that too. With the rabbits, for most of the year, we can just go out with a machete, cut plants, and give them the plants. That's what wild rabbits eat, a lot of plants. Mm-hmm. And that seems to work pretty well. I still buy bags of commercial food to give them for times when we're either too busy to go cut more plants. And also sometimes they have gotten parasites before because everything here gets them. And sometimes I'll buy commercial food and give it to them because there's some medicines in it. Mm. And then probably twice a year I'm going to be giving them a medicine to deparasite them. Mm-hmm. At the rate that they grow and that you kill them, it actually probably isn't that big a deal if they get parasites, but I don't like the idea. And we did have one time where they were getting kind of thin, and we were wondering why. The commercial food really fattens them up a lot. Mm-hmm. So we're almost off the commercial food grid for the rabbits. We're going to plant baso and fetch, and those things are winter crops. So we're also getting better at using the fertilizer of the rabbits to fertilize gardens to grow their own food in. Mm-hmm. So we're getting close on it.
Nice.
Chickens are a little harder. Chickens are not some happy little herbivores. They are monsters. If there was a chicken 6 feet tall, it would hurt you. Descended from dinosaurs, and very smart, very fast. So they should be eating a lot of insects. And the thought this year, because we have a bunch of grasshoppers that attacked the gardens this year, was that we were going to go out and collect the grasshoppers and feed them. We were going to dry them, and then during all the year we'd be able to feed these to the chickens. That didn't work out because it takes so long to catch the grasshoppers
Yeah.
that it just didn't pencil out economically. It doesn't
A lot
work.
of energy too to catch them.
Yeah, they're just hard to catch. So we'll either improve our catching ability or whatever, and that also gets rid of a pest. So we're turning a pest into food.
Do you use chicken tractors or anything like that?
There's a lot of ideas in permaculture that I consider kind of cute ideas that don't make sense at the scale we're doing things here.
Okay.
It may make sense to have a chicken tractor in some other system, but I see it as just one more device that you have that then you have to go move or something and do something. My goal is to have as little to do with the animals as possible and have them have a happy life, and I just scrape off the little bits of nutrients that I need. So I consider them cute. There's a lot of other things like that in permaculture. A lot of people, they always want to build an herb spiral. Well, unless your herb spiral is designed so that it actually is doing something, then it's just kind of a spiritual frosting. It feels good. And I need to write up my thoughts on all that. My goal really is to build systems that take care of themselves, that don't use a lot of resources to build, and that requires a lot of patience. I mean, we have planted so many trees out there that I will never see. I'll be dead before they're mature.
Right. Well, hopefully you're planning that way.
Yeah. Somebody's got to. So.
Well, it's almost 10.
Okay. Well, your tax will be here in a sec.
I think I hear him. Cool, man.
Cool. That was pretty good shit. Some of it. We off?
Yeah.
Is it off?
No.
Okay.